This week I picked the movie Warrior for us to watch, 2011. It's kind of like an MMA Rocky type movie with two brothers, estranged brothers, and I watched it when I was younger, and I really enjoyed it, and I think I really enjoyed rewatching it. I felt like it was a good contrast from the last sci-fi opera type movie that we just watched. And I feel it was I really enjoyed rewatching it. I would probably rate it about as good as Avatar. I definitely had problems with this movie, like where it wasn't as good. But I'd say another 7 out of 10 for sure. I know that's not great. The first two movies are the same, but so I don't know who wants to go next, but
Well, my main, I'm going to start off with the negative because I really did like
okay.
this movie overall.
Did you actually watch this movie, Chris?
I actually watched this movie.
No,
I
he
actually
didn't.
came through
No, he
and
didn't.
watched this movie in full. But my main gripe with this movie is, well, like first of all, like the two main characters are like really good. Like Brendan is the underdog of all underdogs, and Tommy is like a goddamn like war hero. So he's like kind of like this hero of all heroes. And
Definitely root for both.
yeah, and I get Brendan and how like he's a teacher. He's which is like the most noble job you could think of. Like they couldn't have wrote Brendan to be more of an underdog, but and I get why like Brendan wins. But my main gripe with the movie is why does Tommy lose? Because we never got like him and his emotional turmoil like actually affect his fighting in any way, and like at the end of the movie, it's like Tommy just kind of loses, despite the fact that he's like the all-time great. Like they literally hyped him up to be this like insane fighter that can knock somebody out with one punch, but we never get the reasoning for why he loses. But that's that's kind of like my only main complaint with it. Other than that, I really enjoyed this movie, and I would give it probably an 8 out of 10.
Damn.
I didn't expect anyone to rate higher than me. Man, maybe I was a little soft on it. So
I'll go next. Yeah, I think that Chris, you kind of hit it on the head there with like it was so easy to root for the school teacher because like he is like the straight up underdog of all underdogs. But I don't even know why Tommy is even fighting. Oh, I guess he's trying to give money to that lady, but like I don't know. Like they didn't really flesh that out. Like they said that at the very end. Like he's trying to get money for the one like her his like war
they had
buddies.
2 kids.
Brendan was definitely the more developed of the two characters.
Yeah, it's his.
Yeah.
He seemed kind of like shoehorned in, even though he's the main character. But yeah, honestly, like it's a fun movie to watch because I like MMA so much, and like all the like submissions that they go through, like the fucking omoplata. It's like nobody like you have to like know jujitsu a little bit to know like what an omoplata even is. Like that's not even like a day one jujitsu thing. Like that's like a couple belts down the line. So it was really cool to see like all that shit. It was also cool that fucking Rumble Johnson was in it. They had all these like actual like UFC people in the movie. It was super enjoyable as like a fan. I would say I would give this movie a 7.1 because it's probably a 7 out of 10, but I would
That's
rather
That's rough.
I would rather watch this than
I'm doing that.
7.5. Like shut up.
Yeah, no. 7.1 because it's 7.1 because I would rather watch this movie than Avatar, but they're basically like the same
Same
if I had to pick one of the
level.
over, it's Warrior over Avatar.
I agree. Can I
but
add
yeah.
something? I forgot to mention that this is filmed in Pittsburgh, where we are all
Bro,
from.
whoever
which
the
is-
director
I
of
thought
this
was-
movie, I don't know who the director is, but they're clearly from Pittsburgh, or I'd be shocked if
Yeah.
they weren't. And they love Pittsburgh so much. They like ingratiated the city of Pittsburgh into every single scene. And I thought it was a little too much, but
Yeah.
Really, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think I like this movie more than you guys, to be honest.
Really?
I don't know. I guess I don't watch a lot of sports movies about fighting, or if I do, it's boxing, and I don't really like boxing. So for me, this was probably like top 5 sports movies that I've seen. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10 just
Really?
because like I liked that it was about the sport, but I also thought it was really interesting just their family dynamic and how that like you could see how like their upbringing affected their childhood and their lives, and I don't know. I just thought their family was really interesting. My only complaint is like the ending. I feel like, especially for Tommy, like you have no idea what happens in his life after that. Like he's probably in jail, but like
It
yeah.
also going south for him. So
He is in super jail. This is the military police.
yeah.
I remember rooting for him the first time I watched the movie. That's why I agree with you guys that like I
thought
was
Tommy
caught
was
up.
going to win.
I was
thought
shocked
Tommy was
the
gonna
first time I watched it. Watching it again, I'm like, yeah, it looked like him. But sorry, Cole, go ahead with your rating. I didn't hear you give a number.
Yeah. I think I'd probably give it an 8. Just because I mean, as far as like sports movies go, this one had like more depth
good.
than I thought it was gonna have. So, yeah.
I mean, the movie was
Uh,
definitely like narrative first, fighting second, which was obviously good. And then I think fighting
agree
is
and
a really
disagree.
good it's a really good vessel for, like the culmination between the brothers. Like,
Yeah.
it all comes down to the one fight. And if it was like a different sport, I think it'd be kind of lame. But to see them like beating each other,
It's
up
not
is
as
very-
individual.
Yeah.
It's not as individual and
It's
as personal
solid.
with most of them. You're up, John. Let's hear it. I'm excited to hear John's opinion.
So I like this movie overall. I think it was pretty good. I think the characters and their interpersonal conflict is really strong. That's like the main focus of the movie. And also, I thought the action scenes were good too. I am not by any means really a fan of MMA or UFC. I have to listen to you guys,
Yeah.
Sam and Nate,
Love
talk
MMA.
about it all the time. I have to endure it. But
You've enjoyed some. You've
overall,
enjoyed some.
though, I like this movie, but it just doesn't really have that much like lasting impact on me. Like while I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is like, this is a good movie. I really like well made. But after the fact, it just, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't really have much lasting impact on me, and I don't know. It just didn't go beyond being like a good movie. It's not gonna like stick around too much in my mind. I don't think. I think a strong suit though is I think it made a lot of the concepts and ideas within MMA and UFC like palatable to a general audience, because the bits and pieces that I have seen of UFC, it seems like it's a very like technical sport and like kind of complicated in that regard, but like I was able to understand very complicated moves and submissions. What was that one thing called? Is that the omoplata or whatever?
Omoplata.
Yeah,
When he
I'm
yeah.
breaks
surprised
his
you
arm,
remembered that. Yeah.
Oh,
That was actually sick that you remembered that.
I saw a video of some guy on the streets of Brazil get his arm broken in an omoplata like a week ago.
God.
So that's why I remember it.
You're super
But-
hyped up.
Dude, yeah, it was like, what
It's
the
like a
fuck?
Kimura on your stomach, ain't it? Like when you're
Yeah, you
the
like
other guy's on his
roll.
stomach.
You're kind of like, it's like the guy's here and you kind of like, it's hard to explain, but you get almost like a
break
Kimura
his
that
arm.
way, but your hips are forward. Like you lock it in with like your
Ugh.
legs. It's really weird.
Which is probably hard.
Speaking of the technicality of like the fighting, I thought it was really cool of to see the dichotomy between the two brothers' fighting style, because they're obviously such
Yeah.
different people in real life.
Yeah.
But Tommy is just like, all right, I'm gonna just like punch you. I'm gonna just beat your ass.
Be an animal.
Like not even think about it. And Brendan is clearly this like super technical fighter who like wears you out and then ultimately like beats you with some like weird move that I've never heard of, because I don't really, I'm not interested in
I'm
MMA
not
or anything
that
like
into
that. But yeah, it's just I feel like the dichotomy of the brothers was they were so different in real life but also in fighting. And
Yeah.
that was super interesting.
I feel
That's a
like
good
that's a good way
catchphrase.
of showing the underdog versus what would it be called? Like there's the underdog and then the guy you expect to win. He
Fan
definitely
favorite?
fights like the guy who's
Top
always
dog.
been like top dog. Yeah, he's always been top dog. And that's kind of what the movie does say that. Remember, he was undefeated before he quit to join the military. He was an undefeated wrestler. So he
Yeah.
knew what he was doing. But go ahead, John. You didn't get your rating out. So we could talk about that stuff in a second.
You know that I don't want to have to give my numerical rating.
because John hates it.
Dude, rate it however you want to. The number
Yeah,
scale
give
just
it a
works for
5
us.
or whatever. Like,
Give it a what color do you think?
It's
this
gonna-
movie is?
On a scale of
This is a blue.
red to green, this is a blue.
Well, given that this movie takes place in Pittsburgh, I would give it a gray out of 10.
it's a gray out of 10. That's a good
Wow.
rating.
On a scale of red to
Hurts.
violet.
I feel like that's mid. I feel that sounds like mid to me.
No, see, I don't know. I like this movie overall, just not really as much as everybody else.
I like
Oh.
that.
I feel like he rated
Yeah.
it the same as me, pretty much.
I just wish
I would say
Tommy in the Brendan fight, we would have had some reason. I know I already said this, but like
Shit.
some reason why Tommy lost. Like we understand why Brendan wins because he's doing it for his family. He has like this and like he has this incredible motivation that like nobody else has. But like we never got the reason for why, or like what is wrong with Tommy to why he loses. And I thought like if they would have just had a scene where he like, oh, I can't like. Oh, like he's too confused about the family stuff that he can't focus on fighting or something like that. It would have like completed the movie
Yeah.
and like a little better. But that's just me.
I do believe there is like it's meant to be one, but it's I like it because it's not like some fighting technique that's how he beats him really. But it doesn't show it perfectly, but they talk about it a lot where it's like Brendan always win because he relaxes and he stays focused in whatever's going on, but Tommy is super emotional and he's fighting, going hard the whole time, and it makes him make mistakes. Like that's the whole point of the other coach. If you don't pay attention to what he's saying, you might not realize that's
Yeah.
why he's always like Beethoven, stay calm, you
Yeah.
can do this.
It
His
felt
coach,
like when,
says that verbatim, like literally
Yeah.
what you just said, Nate. Like
Yeah,
be
and that's-
calm,
it's
like,
actually
weather the
something-
storm.
Yeah. And it works, and you see it all throughout. I feel like they could have did it with a little better with Tommy, with him making more mistakes throughout. That's something I actually do have a problem with
the fact that he
sometimes
just
in the
beats
fighting.
up everyone and then gets to the
Yeah.
championship and then loses. It's like how? What
Yeah,
happened?
I'm okay with him crushing people, but they should have showed him being a little more risky and making mistakes here and there because he's so just only going for it, which I think is what they were going for. But had they shown him make some mistakes throughout, it would have made it a little better.
or I think if Tommy was like this, if Tommy was also this like super technical fighter, but then when he gets to the championship to fight his brother, he just like loses track, and that's when he goes and just tries to like
It's emotional, yeah.
yeah, he's so emotional. He's just trying to beat him up, and then that's why he loses. But we never got that.
Well, that's something funny about the movie is and they talk about Tommy being the better one the whole time at wrestling, but he doesn't wrestle. And I feel like that is part of the reason is that he is more of a wrestler actually, but he doesn't wrestle because he just wants to beat you up, Like he never wrestles anybody, but the whole movie they're talking about how, and I think they actually do that on purpose because there is a whole thing throughout the whole movie about him not wanting to accept his father. So he probably won't use the wrestling that his dad taught him when he was younger. That's all headcanon, but I always felt that was pretty implied because it's more in their conversations outside of it where like he's constantly denying the dad, even though the dad is trying, he's shutting him out. Which you can't blame him. That's one of the best parts about it is he is a dick and he's kind of antagonistic to a lot of people. But you're like, and so is Brendan sometimes, which I think is another good thing about Brendan is he's not only the good guy, or he doesn't always do the good guy thing. He's kind of, he has a problem with his dad. Not unjust, but he's not willing to forgive his dad that easily. Even though he is the first one too.
Real quick, but are the fighters like other than the brothers, like the Koba and those are real people, right? Those are like real fighters. Okay.
I know Rumble Johnson is his name was Midnight.
Depends.
I knew while
Depends
asking
what
that
you
I
mean
would
by
sound
real.
stupid.
Because
Well,
like
Kurt Angle.
they're not they're not real, like they don't like share their exact names, but I'm pretty sure they're all actual fighters. I think. I mean, I know for
Mhm.
sure Anthony.
They don't
So,
give their
so, like,
real
I could
name.
go view like Koba's like MMA.
Yeah, Koba's
history.
like for sure. Yeah, for sure, just like some made up
Yeah.
like character.
Well,
but
Um,
he like the actor is real.
Yeah.
I actually don't know. Let me
The
look up
actor
the actor.
probably was. I don't know if
Koba-
he was.
Koba was
The
Kurt
guy-
Angle.
Was
Which- Yeah,
no, it
yeah,
wasn't.
it
Was it really? Oh, he's
Are you
from Pittsburgh. Yeah, wait,
serious?
was it?
I love you, America. How you doing, Pittsburgh? I love you.
What's crazy? Dude, he won the Olympics
Holy
with a
fuck.
broken neck. What a man. That is a true man right there.
Yeah, and they turned him into like
He
a
could have been
Russian
Tommy.
killing machine.
But I did think that was funny. Wait, can I mention something? There is some moments in this movie that I find like enjoyably corny, and I think one of them is Sparta. Like, why would they name it
Yeah.
Sparta? It does not sound that cool. Like, it's and
You know what?
actually something
It's where they turn boys into men.
something this movie catches a lot that you guys maybe Sam will get it, but really old UFC events, this is exactly what they were like because
Yeah.
they really
That's-
weren't
that's literally-
structured. And it was always like, let's just get the best of the best in there and have them fight in any way they can. Like, obviously, there's more rules in this, but you go back to like '96, the first UFC event, they were pulling hair. Like, I don't think you could hit someone in the groin. That was like it. Anything else was allowed. You could throw them over the
You couldn't
cage.
like you couldn't bite
Bite
or
'em.
like
Yeah, I don't think
or
you
like
could
hit the
bite.
groin.
Do you think they would ever do an event like that in the UFC, or have they, where it would be like 4
They
fights in
have.
2 days?
I thought that was a
Yeah.
real
No,
event.
They
No,
have.
no, it was called Pride,
Yeah.
Pride Grand Prix and stuff like that. There was
Pride
other
did
ones.
that.
The first UFC was like
UFC
that.
1 was like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
I think it was all in the
tournament-based.
same
And
night.
Rendo, and you know who won it, which I think is why they did it like this. Do you know who won it? He was like 5'7", 5'6", like
He's like 170
Brazil-
pounds.
170-pound Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter. And so he didn't really punch anyone, but he would just submit them, pull their hair, all that
He-
shit. Like I remember, like
He beat
he
Ken
crushed
Shamrock.
everybody.
Ken Shamrock
that's why
weighed
they
like
hate each other.
220. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ken Shamrock like at like almost like he's like 1.5 times his size, and he beat him.
It's funny going into the event. Sorry, once again, but people didn't think it was real. They were like, "This is just a show. It's rigged." And then, like a sumo wrestler fought like I forget what he was a kickboxer, but it was like a different type. Kicked his head off, like just kicked him
Holy
right in the
fuck,
face. And they
yeah.
were like, "Whoa, this is real!" Like,
Yeah,
it was really
sumo
cool.
wrestler.
Did he actually
he-
kick his head off?
No, not
Johnny.
literally, but
If,
he could
if
have.
you if you edit that in later, it's
You
like
should.
this shit looks like the street fight videos like you get on Twitter. Like
Oh,
the
you didn't-
sumo wrestler. The sumo wrestler like falls down and he's like sitting on his butt, and the kickboxer just like soccer kicks him in the face. And then they
Yeah,
stop
it's
the
pretty
fight. It's so
nasty.
wild.
So
You didn't have to wear gloves. You had a choice to wear gloves, and a boxer fought with one boxing glove. You could choose to wear shoes. Yeah,
So,
one glove. It was
that's a
smart
question.
because you got to grab, but
So what you're saying is like the fighting in the movie, other than them only showing like the good parts of, like the exciting parts of the of the fight, is this like actually realistic to like what a MMA fight would look like?
Yeah,
it's a little faster paced, I'd say.
Yeah, that's what I
because
figured.
they're
Yeah.
you're usually not going the whole time like that. Like there's usually lulls. They do. I'll give them credit. They do like with specifically Brendan's fight. They feint and stuff. Like he'll feint, go
Yeah.
low. Like it's actually kind of interesting. But
The only two
It's
things
pretty
I think you could poke a hole in is one, if he breaks his arm, they don't let you keep fighting. Like that's the end of the fight. They're,
well,
like, as
maybe back in the day they might have let
Maybe-
that
I don't
go.
know,
This is like
by
2000,
2011. I
No,
don't know.
but
I
it's
don't-
supposed to feel like 2001. I definitely
Yeah.
feel like this movie is supposed to make it feel like that, though it
I
isn't.
never thought about that. When
Yeah.
does the movie take place? I don't know.
I think it
I
takes
thought
place
it was-
in 2011.
2011, yeah, because it was during the
Yeah.
recession or right after, because that's the whole. I forgot about that. That was the whole him losing his house plot with his kid getting sick, and all that is
Yeah.
it was had
That's
to,
pretty
which is
extreme.
why it was
Like-
relatable.
Like Brendan had such an uphill battle from the start. Like it's such a he's losing his house. His daughter has
They-
what was wrong with
They
his daughter?
did say fuck
Problem.
everyone in the
Like,
movie.
Heart
His
problem?
heart almost, yeah, his heart
Okay.
almost, her heart almost failed.
Yeah, he's a teacher. Like it's just like Brendan is just such a like larger than life character at times. I feel.
Definitely
One
want him
thing
to
I
win.
really liked, like narrative, like I guess is like structurally of the movie, is that the story, like the way it unfolds, isn't like the first act is the setup, then there's like the second act, and then there's the finale. Like you're still learning things about the plot and the people's backgrounds, like in the third act.
Mm.
Like you don't find out like what happened to him in Iraq, like until like the last 20 minutes of the movie. Like the story constantly unfolds, and it like
if it-
is really refreshing to like have a story told that way.
Yeah, I like that. It felt like there were two separate stories. Like there was one like who's going to win this big tournament that's coming up, and then you're following that, and then you're also getting like the
Will their
insight to this family,
come
and it's
together?
happening at the same time, and then it culminates.
Yeah.
Like it all like leads up to the one point where both stories kind of wrap up. So yeah, I like that part of it.
I do wish there was like 5 more minutes at the end. I did
Yeah.
want to mention that. Like
Yeah.
there was definitely, it felt like it was cut down a lot. Like it felt like it's a decently long movie, but it goes by pretty quick. But it feels like they had to cut a lot. Like there probably was a little more story they wanted to include and they didn't get to. It definitely feels like that in some instances. Like what happens with Tommy? What happens with the school? You know, does he
Yeah.
get his job back? I mean, like there's a couple questions for sure.
Was that
Yeah,
the
I guess he
intentional
doesn't-
part of like the principal? Was he the principal? Like I don't know who that guy
Yeah,
was.
he
I
was.
like the principal. I like the
was that
principal. He
was
a cool
that an
character.
intentional part where he's like this movie like convinced me that like fighting is immoral, and I've never heard anybody have that opinion.
Yeah,
in
well, you would be
2011?
shocked in 2011. You would be shocked by
Yeah.
how much propaganda there was against UFC.
Dude, I was legit confused as to why he got suspended from his teacher job. Like I
Hey,
didn't
teachers,
It was
Well,
I think that
being a
happened
teacher,
today.
it would also, yeah, they're pretty
Yeah.
strict about weird stuff like that. They no, but see, that's the thing is people like what's his name was why can't I think Forrest Whitaker was a math teacher, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty realistic.
Forrest Griffin. Forrest Whitaker is the
Oh,
actor.
Whitaker's the actor. Yeah, Forrest Griffin. Love Forrest Griffin.
No, dude. Yeah,
But,
Forrest Griffin was a math teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, I was teaching math before this. Like, I remember
Yeah.
him saying that in an interview.
There's that clip of Chuck Liddell. He's like, everyone thinks we're like
I was an
cockfighters.
accountant.
He's like, I have a degree in accounting for Christ's sake.
Yeah, it should be talked about. Like they, like John McCain was against it. I think he was the one that said it was like human cockfighting.
It
And then in
wasn't legal.
26
I mean, that's just John
2016.
McCain being John McCain.
in New York, that's true. But in New York, during a Supreme Court like thing to get it into New York, it probably wasn't Supreme Court, but it was a big court in New York. They were like having the mayor of New York or someone pretty up there in New York was like, it's like gay porn with a different ending. Like that was something
Oh,
said
I
on
remember
live
that. Yeah, I
TV.
remember
because
that.
the whole movie,
Insane.
I was like, wait, did fighting used to be, or maybe it still is,
It was
like this,
treated like
viewed
that.
as this immoral thing, or
it's,
like
it's not legal in all
Less
states.
so.
Like it,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it
never
was
knew
not
that. I
allowed
never knew that.
it
I just thought it was
What
like
was
a
the f-
sport.
what was the first fight in New York? It was like 2015.
2016, it was Conor McGregor winning the second belt. Who couldn't remember that? That was the craziest night in the UFC. But
Yeah,
oh shit, I thought I wanted to say.
stomping Eddie Alvarez.
He did in like 13 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
or no, wait, that was the
That was
the one that won.
Jose Aldo.
He just beat him up for a couple rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like really like the only place you could do it was Las Vegas. That's why like all the major events are there.
And they
it was
still
like the
are,
only
honestly.
state that would legalize it. Yeah.
At first, now it's kind of in a decent amount of places like Texas. They'll have it in. They can have it here, but I don't know about big events. I've never seen a big event here. They have
Yeah,
like fight
it's
nights,
weird.
free
Because
stuff.
essentially like it is just two people fighting. Like there's not really much difference like
It's probably
you know.
safer than boxing. Probably.
yeah,
Like,
I think it's safer.
Okay, another point. Like
definitely is.
as I was watching this movie, I was like, "Holy shit! I would never want to ever try this." Like I feel like boxing would be something fun to try,
Yeah.
like as a one time. But this seems like holy shit! Like I'm not like I'm gonna get hurt doing this. Like why would?
well, you got to
anyone
think
do
about it this way. In MMA, whenever you get beat up, it's over. In boxing, you get 10 seconds to get back in it. Like you get
10
knocked out.
long seconds.
10 of the slowest seconds you'll ever see in your life. But yeah, you can
Yeah.
you can get concussed and get up and fight again.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
that's
and
not
in
happening.
boxing, like there's no strikes to the legs, there's no takedowns. Like it's only like
just head and
I'm
body.
gonna hit you in the head until like unless you don't guard your body. And it's like
No,
you pretty
one's
much just get punched in the head.
Yeah, I think I'd rather get hit in the head than like get my like leg snapped or some shit.
That almost
Well, you
never
could just tap.
Just tap.
Yeah,
just tap.
they don't
That's why
break
they have that.
limbs very often. And you're much more likely to get choked out than like armbar.
Yeah, get
Like,
tapped. You only
somebody
get,
who like
7 seconds.
knows yeah, and anyone who knows like jujitsu is just gonna like put you to sleep in 5 seconds, and then you're just like, okay, the fight's over.
I
Who's,
wanted to talk about something. This is the biggest part of the movie for me. It's my favorite thing about it. We haven't discussed it all. Nick Nolte, greatest performance, like one of the best performances ever for this movie. Like you
Is Nick
know,
Nolte?
like he didn't have to go that hard. That's the dad.
Okay,
The dad. Oh my god. He's you definitely feel like he was a terrible person, but you feel so
Yeah.
awful for him. Like you really
Yeah.
feel like someone who's trying. And like the part when he's like he sees his grandkids at Brendan's house and he's like choking up
Yeah.
talking. That's hard to watch, man. It's sad.
Dude, when Brendan says like that's just some nice old man, I was like, "Fuck, dude! I think I'd kill myself
Wow,
if
yeah.
I heard someone say that."
I
to
actually
me.
really disagree. I felt like the sympathy that the movie was trying to give us towards this old man that was clearly a piece of shit whenever they weren't filming, like the part of the movie that wasn't. Like I felt like that sympathy was unearned. And
Well, I
actually
feel like
didn't
I
like
would
it.
agree with you. I feel like I would agree with you if we didn't actively see him really be. That's why I think it's good, is because they really show him being different throughout the movie. He does relapse too, which is very realistic, but like he's really trying. You really feel like he's trying, and he does do stuff to be better. So I mean, like it's obviously the process isn't over, but I do feel like they make you feel for him a lot. Like
But
like it's a
just
movie,
feel like
so it
by
has to wrap
not
up.
showing what happened, like like with the whole.
I would actually like to
non-
talk about that.
By not showing it makes you want to root for the father, but like he's clearly a piece of shit.
Well,
Like,
see, I disagree. Especially at the beginning, I didn't root for him at all. I feel for Tommy because, like I said, I wanted Tommy to win. I feel for Tommy a lot at the beginning when he is like, it is clear the dad is trying, but he's like, it's too late. Like, I don't want to hear it now. And I also feel they did a really good job of how it upsets Tommy actively that he is being better, because that would suck. Like, because it's like now you want to be a dad. Like it did. Like it's too late now, and now you're gonna try to come to me, and all this has already happened, and now I have to forgive you.
I wouldn't say it makes you root for the dad, but it does make you feel bad for him.
Bad
Like I
for
feel
him.
like you can have one without the other.
Yeah,
'Cause,
if they
like,
didn't forgive him, wouldn't blame him. You know,
he's
it
in,
never
he's in
also.
such.
Tommy never does. I will say that Tommy, we never
But-
see does forgive him.
But because we never see like the actual scene, it's like why
Yeah.
should I feel like the sons are being a dick by not forgiving him, but like clearly he did something off the screen that like I just feel like needed to be seen to like actually develop the dad as a character.
See, but that's discussion to be had with movies. Like, and I'm going to bring this up, and then you guys can just say what you want to say about it. But is showing trauma in movies, is it always a good thing? Like, if they showed that, like, because I would compare it to something I heard about Saving Private Ryan, where the beginning was so graphic that where people were like, wow, PTSD, war is messed up. But people with PTSD that were in wars like that couldn't watch the movie because it was so traumatic. You know what I mean? Like, do you have to see it to feel it? Like, like, can you understand the
Yeah,
character?
but it's just like
without
I'm rooting.
actively
Like
seeing
I'm like mad at Tommy in the movie because he's not forgiving his dad when his dad is clearly being very vulnerable to him. And the reason why, like, who am I to actually like tell Tommy if he should forgive his dad? Like, I don't even know what happened. Like that's the whole thing. And I wish I had.
think
more of
that's.
that.
Well, you see
I
what he
think this
does now.
adds
But go ahead.
to. I think this adds to how like this is a good thing for the movie. Like this makes it a good
Good
movie. Where
discussion.
it doesn't
Yeah.
tell you how to feel. It kind of just lays it out, and the fact that like everybody is coming to this with like a different perspective and a different like way of viewing it. I think that is like something that is missing from a lot of movies. Most movies kind of like put you on like a track and then just like tell you where to go and what to think. And this is very much like a gray area movie where you kind of like sympathize for everybody in the movie, but everybody also has like some fucked up shit that
Yeah.
they've done.
There's a reason to root for and against everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. It's kind of like
Like-
real life.
I feel like the whole movie they're building towards like some sort of conclusion with the dad that like never happens.
I thought we were
and
gonna
then-
get a
and then the
flashback.
movie ends.
Yes, I
Like
thought we were gonna
like-
get the flashback, but we never did.
yeah,
I
well,
enjoyed that you didn't see it personally. That's
yeah.
that was me though. I enjoyed you had to feel it. Like you had to feel for the experiences without seeing, because that is more realistic. Like if someone tells you this thing happened, you're not going to be able to see it. You just have to understand it.
But-
Sorry, Cole. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, like,
My
we don't
fault.
even know how the dad felt during that last fight. Like, we don't even know.
Uh,
I don't know.
you
I just
see
feel like
him,
his perspective is
Don't
missing.
you see him? Don't you? At the end, he's the one that nods at him to just do it.
Yeah, the dad
to end it,
nods
you know what I
at
mean?
Brendan,
Yeah.
and because he wants
Yeah.
him to beat Tommy in this instance because
Yeah.
he's like
Yeah,
finally
yeah.
acknowing him.
Yeah, because he,
as a
he always
fighter.
thought like Tommy would be the.
I was
super
waiting to
villain,
get to
right?
that.
But,
you know,
okay, yeah, and
the good
I
part.
guess if we did get like a scene at the end of like the sons
like I said-
forgiving the dad, like that wouldn't have felt earned because like
Yeah.
we don't even know what happened. I think it's better that it did.
And we don't know what happens after. We don't know if the
Yeah.
dad fucks up again. Well, all we know is what happened right there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Didn't they imply that he beat their mother?
Yeah,
Right?
no, they directly said it
Yeah,
right in the
yeah,
beginning. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom,
It's
Tommy
actually
said,
a
like
pretty
a
slick
throwaway
line.
joke, and that was like,
Yeah, he
what was it?
says, you can't find a woman that could take a punch these days, and it's like it's a good line. That's a
Yeah.
really good line to just imply a lot. Like it implies a lot without showing a lot. Like very
Yeah,
good
at
dialogue.
first, I thought he was just saying like, "Oh yeah, our mom was like pretty tough, wasn't she?" And then it was like, "Oh no, like he definitely like
I
that's
would
not
like
like some
to-
like off color
yeah.
thing."
Yeah, I only thought back to that line like 10 minutes later, and then I like realized like, oh,
And you,
that's
Yeah.
why they, yeah, there's clearly a reason here. Yeah.
that was something
Cool,
I
I
liked
got a
watching the intro
question.
back. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say you rated this movie the highest out of all of us here.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah, you
like
did, and I
your
was shocked.
favorite like what was your favorite aspect of the movie? Like why rate it so high? Was it like the
Yeah.
pace, the story, the fighting? It probably wasn't, but like you know, like
Yeah.
what
Yeah, I just liked how the relationship between the brothers and the dad was so unlike most of the movies you see or that I see, I guess. It just felt like you don't really get the perspective of like if a father's a drunk in the movie or like someone who beats their wife, you don't really see like 10 years down the road. Like you don't see them trying to fix that or fix themselves. Like I feel like that's like a perspective I've never seen in a movie. And I just thought all their relationships just was really refreshing and like
Characters
done
were
really
great.
well. Yeah.
I was gonna say in that about the intro because you were talking about that how it does subtly build up the relationship with the parent and like you don't really realize at first what it was like if he hated him or what was going on, and as it progresses you learn a lot, like I said, without really knowing what happened. Like you could imply a lot of what
I
was
felt
going
like
on.
the story of the family, like I just wanted to know what happened. Like the entire movie, I'm like, please tell me what
Could have cut the
happened.
fighting out. Could have cut the
But-
fighting out.
Yeah.
No, but like
Good
I wish
movie,
I
you
would
know,
have
that-
had a really solid idea, and I just felt like I was missing something, and I was like begging to have like like some
He
sort of
wants the
like
prequel.
like what was the scene where the dad was at Brendan's like front yard? Like,
That's what we were talking
whole
about
s-
earlier. It's super sad.
Like, but like I feel like they never truly explained it there, and I wanted that scene to end with like, this is why I don't forgive you, and well, why didn't the brothers get along? Like Brendan
Yeah.
stayed with the dad because his girlfriend and future wife was there in wherever.
I could explain.
So when Tommy and his mom were planning on leaving to get away from their dad because he was a drunken monster, they wanted Brendan to come too, but Brendan decided to stay behind because he had met his girlfriend that would eventually become his wife, and he didn't want to abandon her. But Tommy saw it as like betrayal, like, oh, you're siding with him, you're siding with our dad, our monster dad, when it's like, no, I love my girlfriend and I don't want to leave her behind.
Well. Remember, stupid fly. Remember what happened to Tommy after they left? They were supposed to go together to like get a better life, and he is the younger brother, so like all that was now on him once they left. He had to try to take care of mom, and then mom got sick, and they were living, and they made it sound like they were living in like the gutter pretty much. And his mom passed away, had nothing anymore. And it probably felt like he got abandoned by his brother too. At least that's what you're supposed to feel. Obviously, I mean, I'm not the character, but I feel like that's what it's implying.
But I feel like not telling your brother that your mom is like sick and dying and then eventually died is like
Yeah.
Brendan has more reason to be like mad at Tommy than.
But
Tommy
think
and
about
Brendan.
Yeah.
But you got to think about Tommy. That's for us from our perspective. But what about Tommy's perspective? That's the thing. Like you got to feel for Tommy that he like. Why would he want to forgive him after that? Like
How old do you think Tommy was whenever
they were.
like, all of
He
this
was.
happened?
I think it implies that Brendan was
Mid-30s.
17.
Oh,
Oh, I
when
thought
it
you said
happened,
when they were
never mind.
young. Yeah, when
Yeah,
they
like,
left.
when-
It implies
when
that
the mom left, yeah.
Brendan was 17, and so he was probably 16, 15. I don't know if he was a year, 2 or 3 younger.
I don't know why I assumed that they were older. Like I assumed like one was like 21, the other one was like 19.
No, I
And-
think
no.
I think it was when Tommy was 18 and Brendan was 16. I thought that's what it was. Like
Brendan was older.
Switch,
Tommy
switch the
Brendan's
ages.
older.
Brendan's the older brother.
Yeah.
Brendan's the older brother.
oh no,
You said it in
Brendan's
the wrong
older
order.
brother.
No, Brendan's older.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it said he was
Yeah, that's
17 at the
Oh.
time. It said he was 17. at the
I
time.
didn't even know when they
Yeah,
said it.
but I thought Tommy left because like he was old enough to where like he could like legally live on his own with his mom. Like I thought that's why
No.
like
no.
so he could like take care of it. So
No,
Tommy
that's
was the
why
younger brother.
Yeah,
So
that's why
Tommy left because he had no
Yeah.
choice, but and he felt
Yeah.
like Brendan should also like should have just left because
Have
like
left.
that's what like
Yeah, I thought that because he kept saying that like he was being overshadowed by Tommy, but I didn't even catch like I think I just assumed by the way like the language you used.
No,
because Tommy was like the better
Tommy was more
fighter.
talented. He was more talented. Yeah.
He had
He was a
raw
better
talent.
wrestler. That's why I said he didn't wrestle after that. I did like also that they really actually this brings up two topics, but Brendan was training even before he started training. I like that they included that in the movie as like a hint that he was fighting because they're talking about like the
Oh,
scars
okay.
on his face and he's like working out in the garage and stuff
Yeah.
before you realize he's fighting again. But
I actually really like that scene because it's like a clever sort of subversion where it's like, you see him working out in the morning, like just like pumping iron, but you don't realize that it's for preparing for a fight. You just think that he's like an early riser, just getting an early workout in. I thought that was kind of clever.
Yeah. At one point, like I think his coach said, like Brendan was like a below 500 UFC fighter or whatever.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
never
yeah, he
listened
said
to
he
me
was average.
before. So what flipped for Brendan to turn from that below average UFC fighter to suddenly winning this tournament? Like that's what I want to know.
well, it's implied that like if you watch, he can't. Like I actually think that's something they do that's good. Is like
Is
he's
it
always
like
getting
from a
kinda
character
beat up.
perspective? Like
He
from a
has to,
character
because
perspective, what
because he
changes?
has
He-
to.
he
That's
does-
that's
yeah,
one
he
of my
doesn't have an
favorite parts.
option.
If you don't, then
Yeah.
Like for his family.
no
like,
home.
Yeah.
If you don't,
like,
then
we'll
no
do that.
home.
When
Hey,
you're
also-
fighting in the UFC, like you're just gonna get paid to fight. Like it doesn't really matter. But like it's like if he doesn't win this whole tournament, his family falls apart. Like they're probably gonna get like divorced. Like things are gonna go like horrible if he does not win
Yeah.
this.
Hmm.
Like his life's like over.
Yeah, his life's pretty much over if he fails right now. That's my favorite part is when he's like, if you don't win this, then you don't have a home to go to.
Yeah.
that like I think that's right before he fights. Is that like is
He
that in
says
the,
if you don't knock him out, you don't have a home to go to. It's right when
Yeah.
he fights Shogun.
Mhm.
yeah. And that's when he
Sure.
taps him out. I also like the setup where he has him and he won't tap it first. And he's like, just break it, just break it, just break it. And then that comes back
Yeah.
later with his brother and he actually has to
Yeah.
break it. It's a great
Yeah.
part.
I thought it was
Okay,
weird
so I
that.
feel
Oh, go ahead.
okay, cool. No, cool. Please go ahead.
I was just gonna say I thought it was really weird that the principal had like such a problem with having someone fight on their teacher like staff or whatever, but they clearly could have just Googled his name and they would have saw that he fights in the UFC or fought in the UFC, and they somehow
Yes,
never
bro.
knew that.
I was so annoyed.
Well-
like as if teachers don't have like extensive background checks that they have to go through to become a teacher. Like that dude
It's-
definitely knew that he was in the UFC, and I can't be
Especially
convinced otherwise.
teaching in Western PA, it's like so competitive.
At the North Hills
Yeah.
High School, that's actually in
Oh, yeah,
Pittsburgh,
yeah, the North
not
Hills, yeah.
Philadelphia.
Dude, John, we played baseball on the field that they showed, like in the fucking
Yeah.
shot.
Like so they filmed the Philly scenes in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
did
all
see
of
that.
it.
The school scenes.
That's funny.
Yeah, the school scene
Yeah.
were in Pittsburgh.
I would assume they
Or,
all
and
would.
they had
That's
said it was in
funny.
Philly.
What was up with that group of teenagers that was like you just
I
like
love
follow them around
listening
for
to
like
them
two
talk.
scenes? It was so funny. It's like, yo, Mister, what was his name? I can't remember his last name.
Mr. C. It was
Yeah,
dude,
Mr.
there you
C.
don't remember? It's Brendan
You really
Conlon,
pieced that guy
baby.
up in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I actually they do use some like UFC terms like from back then. Like they say tuned up a lot. Like you don't really hear that outside of
Yeah.
like a fight place like where they train.
Yeah, it's funny.
An MMA gym.
I feel like okay.
But-
I think I'm not alone in this, but because nobody else has brought it up. But has anybody here read Moby Dick?
I was also curious about
I
what
wanted
you
to bring
guys
that
thought
up.
of the
Because
symbolism because I haven't read it either.
oh, okay, because they clearly like in pretty much like every act of the movie, there's like a scene about Moby Dick, and I was like, I wish that I knew that story better because I bet there's a lot of parallels, like either within the characters or the fathers.
For the two people that like it's like you said, it's two separate stories. So it mainly goes to the dad and Tommy, but Tommy's is it's so Moby Dick's all about like chasing something and you can't let it go. Like it's just trying to get something and it ends up destroying you. And for like Tommy, it's like his stuff with his family not forgiving, and that's why he's always chasing something the whole time. And that's why it has to do with their story. And for the dad, it's forgiveness. Like he's trying to earn forgiveness, you know? That's what he's chasing. And it also definitely, I feel like it implies with the alcoholism, you know, like him trying to not go back to that and stuff. I think that's why he likes that story. Or like, because when they were young, they were chasing the idea of him passing up that Greek fighter, you know?
Oh yeah.
So that's something else they were chasing, and he probably drove the kids super hard doing like training for that and stuff. That's probably part of the reason he was so brutal on them and stuff. Like not trying to give a good reason for it,
What's
but
the
I'm just saying
moral
that's
of
what he was
Moby Dick?
doing.
Is it like
I believe it's like let things go sometimes. Like,
yeah, don't let like obsession
don't go
kill you.
chasing wonderful?
yeah, don't let obsession
Don't go
destroy you.
chasing
Pretty
wonderful
much.
like that.
That's the
Yeah, 'cause-
moral of this
'cause-
movie. Don't
does-
go
does
chasing
Captain-
waterfalls.
Does Captain Ahab get his crew killed too? Does he like get everybody like that? I feel like there are like more consequences than to just him losing his mind. Like then like a lot of his like crew like
Yeah, a lot of them
or
die.
something.
They lose a lot on the journey. That's a big thing. I think he dies in the end. I don't remember
The
though.
only thing I know about Moby Dick is that there's like a really heavily dedicated chapter to how to repair a fishing net.
Really?
Okay, this book is pretty based. I might have to like actually read it. Do you think this is me just kind of thinking out loud here? Do you think that Brendan's like Moby Dick parallel is him avoiding fighting? Like he's trying to chase down this normal life, even though he's like clearly meant to be a fighter.
Maybe it's.
I'm like trying to find out what his parallel would be to that.
I feel like it
That's
might
the only
be
thing I
him
can think
his
of.
inferiority complex, or the wanting his dad's
Oh, maybe-
attention, because that
Yeah.
is implied
maybe
throughout the
that's what it
movie
is.
that he wanted to be the favorite, even though their dad was like a piece of shit, which is pretty realistic because that's how you would feel as the kid. Even if your dad was a piece of shit, if you were like second fiddle, then you would want his attention because it's your father, you know, like that's
Yeah.
what every kid wants.
Yeah, it seems like he gets better at fighting when he's not fighting for his dad, but he's fighting for his like actual family. Like,
Yeah,
the
he's
people he
fighting for
considers
something better.
family.
It seems like the movie implies that when you fight for that, when you fight for like a better reason, you're going to do better. And that's something interesting is Tommy does really well because he's not really fighting for a bad reason either, you know,
Yeah.
but it is also going to destroy him. He's also destroying himself, like trying to get it. I
Why
think
does
I wanted
Tommy
to
run
mention
away
this.
when he knocks people out?
I feel like that's just badass. That was just like a really badass.
It's just
thing he did in the
hard.
movie.
I kind of got the
I'm gonna be
perspective that he was
honest,
like
that was just
running,
hard.
like he was running from the whole military thing, and so people don't find
Yeah,
out.
the door was red
Oh, that could
because
be it,
it
yeah.
represented his emotions. But no, I think it was just badass. I don't think maybe that scene was just cool. Maybe that's
I think it's because he I think associates fighting for glory with his dad and his childhood. So he still wants to fight, but he doesn't want the glory
Wow.
that comes along with it.
because it does seem like he hates fighting. It does like kind of imply that like he really doesn't want to
Yeah.
do it, but this is the best way he could think to get money,
Yeah.
especially because he's
His-
running from the military.
His dad brings that chart up to him of like him versus like that fucking Greek guy.
I can't
He's like,
remember
how
his
many
name.
wins did you get? And he's like get that like away, like put that back where you found it and like cover it up. He's like he doesn't want anything to do with it.
I was gonna mention earlier on because I think it's just like a funny thing you were talking about, Sam, is how in the beginning it feels like they put Tom Hardy in like a sweatshirt and stuff all the time because they don't want you to see how bulky he is, but you still can. I feel like it doesn't work well enough. But the dad says this because remember he's supposed to be on pills and a kind of an alcoholic himself at the beginning. I think he's supposed to be like skinnier and look like kind of a drug addict, you know, look like he's getting skinny and he's on all kind of pills. But because he's bulked up for the movie, he doesn't look like that at all.
Well,
So there's a
yeah,
part where he's
He's
like,
certainly on
he's like, we
some
got,
drugs
Was this film
like-
before or after The Dark Knight Rises? That one?
before.
it's before.
This was before.
It was
Okay,
like
yeah.
a couple years before.
Okay.
But he there's a part where the dad says, we're gonna bulk you up. And the dude's huge. Like the dude is massive. So I think he wasn't supposed to be that bulked up in that part. I don't know.
He's for sure on the sauce because his traps are
It's
like
pretty ridiculous.
huge, bro. Like his traps are
yeah.
like enormous, like distracting.
I don't wanna accuse anybody, but dude's massive. So he might be.
I mean, yeah.
It's right there in
Yeah.
front of you. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we saw the movie. I actually
Yeah,
one thing I do like is how Brendan definitely looks like he was like a school teacher that trained to be a UFC fighter again. Like he looks
Brendan
really in
actually-
shape, but he looks realistic, like a UFC fighter.
Yeah, Brendan legitimately is the only person who like, other than like Rumble Johnson, who looks like a UFC fighter. Like
He is a
he's
UFC
like straight
fighter.
up like straight up, 15% body fat, like not like just completely destroyed, not like, huge bodybuilder delts. Like he looks like very functionally strong.
Three necks,
Yeah, dude, I do want to say I did get a little sad when Rumble Johnson came on, because if you guys don't know, but he
Yeah.
passed away like a month ago. Like the very first guy that Brendan beats, the black guy,
Midnight.
he got like some skin disease or something, and he was
Yeah.
like, I pulled up his record before we started. He was like 22-6 or something like that. Like he was really good. He fought like very top level guys. He
Fought John Jones,
He beat
didn't he?
Glover. Yeah, he fought John Jones. He beat Glover Teixeira. He knocked him out.
Yeah.
He beat
He was
Gustafson.
champion.
Holy
That's
shit!
crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't remember that. Those are some
Yeah,
pretty
dude, he's
top
got-
tier fighters. Because I assume you guys don't know that, but those are some top tier fighters.
yeah.
Yeah.
He lost to Daniel Cormier twice, but still,
But that's
fucking-
Daniel. That's Daniel Cormier. So that's
He was-
another top tier fighter.
And he was one of those guys, like, he fought at heavyweight, so that's like 235 pounds. He fought at light heavyweight, 205, middleweight, 185, and 170. Like, he fought at
He
all
fought
of
a
like,
lot
he
of weight.
competed at all of those weight classes. And he was like a super, like, cool, like,
He
funny
wasn't.
guy.
He
like, very
wasn't scared of
charismatic.
anybody. He wasn't
Yeah.
scared of anybody. He'd fight anybody anytime. Yeah, he was a good dude. Definitely sad that he passed away.
Yeah,
Rip
and
my
it's not. It
man.
wasn't even like it was just something random, like just some. I think it was some skin disease.
It's skin disease.
He
Yeah,
was, like,
I can't
he
remember.
wasn't able
But
to fight it. So it's definitely a little bit like, oh fuck, man, I can't. Rumble Johnson, a true
Rip.
like UFC legend.
Definitely
Like, he's probably
sad
going to
to
be in
see
the
him.
Hall of Fame.
I'm
Yeah.
sure now, especially because that was a sad that he passed.
I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on like how the fight scenes were shot, because I really liked how they shot them like ground level, like with the fighter, and like they had a lot of shots like behind the cage, so it made it feel like you were there or like you were watching it, like right outside the cage. I just thought that was really interesting. And I feel like movies don't really do that in fight scenes. So yeah.
I thought a lot of the scenes like not shot while fighting were shot like in an interesting way, where they're like zoomed up in on their faces, but you can't even see like the top of their head. Like I don't know, it was just
Hey, letting
yeah, it
their
was kinda
face
weird at times.
letting the face do what they need to do.
Interesting,
That's that's the best piece of acting you got right there is your face. So
It makes perfect sense for a movie like
yeah.
this.
So
Yeah,
I would say I
thought
liked that they were pretty up close in a lot of the fights. They weren't afraid to like make sure you saw what was happening. Like they weren't trying to make sure you like a lot of movies will make it like seem like a trick and just like show them on the ground all of a sudden or something and you don't really see what happened. But I feel like you're pretty aware of what's happening in the fight the whole
Yeah.
time during all of
they
them.
filmed it. They filmed it well, just because of how like non-intuitive like the ground game is in MMA. Like
Mhm.
they did a good job, I think, of making like letting the audience understand, like if they don't know what passing guard is and like getting to mount, they filmed it in a way where you can tell like, oh, like he just did something important there. Or like when he
Yeah.
has like his like leg in a submission, like he's not just like hugging his leg, like something like shitty is happening to the other guy.
I
Like, they
actually
filmed
think
it, I
they
think, in
did
a
a-
good way.
The announcers help that. I think they get a good job with the
Yeah.
announcers, actually. I forgot to bring that up earlier. The announcing, they're sometimes a little corny. That's kind of how the announcers are
it
anyway.
goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it goes. Some shit
Yeah.
comes across
I
corny.
mean, as someone who's like never like watched UFC or really cares that much, like I felt like I wasn't missing anything at any point during this movie for
Yeah.
not knowing like the technical details of
technique,
what's
yeah.
actually happening.
It wasn't confusing, and that can happen really easily when like a wrestler fights in the UFC, when they take someone down and you're like what is even happening right now?
What's
Like,
his
you
goal here?
almost
What's
need
he going
somebody
for?
Yeah, you almost need somebody to explain to you. Like if you don't watch it a lot, it can be really tough to understand right away unless two people are just throwing bombs at each other.
And if you don't get the right view, like that's something they actually did show in this. Like he would constantly fight his hands and stuff. Like they made sure
Yeah.
you saw that. I feel like that was something they showed you wouldn't see in most things. Like he would try to grab, like put him in a submission, and he would grab his wrist and get out of it. You know, like he just wouldn't break out using his strength most of the time. He'd
Yeah.
do something technical to get out of it. You know, like actually use a real move
Yeah.
to get out of positions. Even if you don't know what it is, you could see it happening.
I feel like I learned a lot about UFC and MMA by watching the movie. Like learning, like, oh yeah, wait, okay, there could be like one, like even between the brothers, how different their fighting styles are. You could learn.
Definitely in
I never
UFC.
even thought about like, oh yeah, there could be different fighting styles for UFC fighters, and that's probably sounds dumb to anyone that's ever watched UFC, but
A little bit.
but I just it's not something that I ever cared to think about. I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
think
something that I did think about, and it's something that I wanted to pose to you guys. Do you think that it's at all possible to make a sports movie that is like almost entirely without dialogue or like backstory or anything like that? Like it's a movie, but it's fully telling it's telling the story entirely through the event of the game or the match or whatever, the race. Like, do you guys think that's like possible at all?
I mean, I think like I don't know if you could have a movie without character like development happening first. Like what about like like I've definitely seen some like documentary like sports things, but like that's yeah, but like
Mhm.
I feel like any movie is like gonna be like character first.
Because I feel like there's a lot of potential, especially with something like a fighting movie where you get a sense of like what their character is, based upon like their fighting style or like how aggressive they are or how technical they are. You get a sense of what these characters are like purely inside the ring, and I guess like within that instance, that's all that matters. I don't know. I think there's a lot of just potential for it. It would be really hard to do, but I think in the hands of somebody special, it can be cool.
I'm gonna take the stand of that is not possible without any sort of like without any sort of like cuts to like scenes that are happening
Yeah.
outside of the game itself, because you don't get a sense of character, you don't get a sense of who should I root for here or like anything like that without that.
There would have to be some outside story catalyst. There would have to be, even if it's like you're watching the fight and there's other shit going on outside of it that you see. Like there would have to be something, like, or otherwise it would just be a boxing match, and that's what it would. There wouldn't be enough. There could be story, but once again, even some of the best boxing matches were because of the buildup that happened before it. Like there's some.
Yeah,
Pretty
You know what I wanted
crazy
to hear
one.
up more of in Warrior is like I feel like we didn't get enough of like Brendan's coach. Man.
Really?
I
we never-
actually wanted to bring up the training montage. I felt it was pretty solid because I feel like they do a good job, kind of like in Rocky, where they show him at first being behind and like he wasn't really keeping up, but as like the training montage is progressing, you see him passing up their top fighter and like the run and stuff like that.
Bro, there was like
and he's always
10
working the
scenes
hardest.
happening at one time. Like it's like,
Yeah,
oh
it
my god,
definitely
this is so
wasn't great.
stimulating. No, I liked it. I was all for it.
I was gonna say, I feel like you kind of got a good idea of Brennan's trainer's philosophy. It was all about being like peaceful and being calm, but you really don't learn about the father's like fighting philosophy. I
Yeah.
feel like we just see Tommy fight. We never hear what
Well,
the dad
you
has to
do
say.
see him how they train different a little bit. Like he's out in the mud, he's flipping a tire while Brennan's in like a gym training with like a group, while like Tommy's by himself all the
Like, what did the dad actually do in this movie?
Exactly.
He yelled at him a little bit, but it's
You're
implied he's a
gonna
good
not
trainer.
take drugs, and then
Yeah, he did get him off
Yeah.
drugs.
I
He
just
did
think
get
it
him
would have
off
been nice
drugs.
to see him actually like training him or like giving him
Yeah,
some sort of teaching or, you know.
I'd agree.
Yeah, he doesn't even give him any. Well, to be fair, he doesn't have an opportunity to give him any corner advice. Like you see the other Brendan's coach.
Well,
like,
he doesn't work with him
yelling-
anymore.
Well, when he was in his corner though, right? Like,
No,
he
not in the
trained him.
last
Like,
fight.
Tommy was just
Not
one
in the
punch
last
him,
fight.
It didn't matter, you know.
yeah. Tommy
Yeah.
didn't like wrestle somebody like to the point. Like it was cool that you saw the other coach like saying like hold out, like you have 5 more seconds, like just hold that
Yeah.
position, or like oh
Don't
like
tap,
transition
don't
to
tap,
this, do
yeah,
that. Yeah.
But again, it was like if Brendan is having these long, like 4 or 5 rounds fights where he's like, you know, like scratching it out at the very end, like Brendan's pulling it off, and Tommy just running up in one
One
punch.
punch.
What does the
Punch
coach
in every
matter?
punch.
You know?
Yeah, true. He didn't really.
Yeah,
All we
yeah.
know is he. But I feel like that goes to the thing, like I said earlier, where he's like, "I'm gonna bulk you up," but he was already bulky, so it feels like he
Yeah.
didn't bulk him up. I feel like that was what you were supposed to get, but
All he
because
did was
Tom Hardy was already huge, and I guess he didn't want to slim down for it for whatever reason. Could have been a contract difference or something.
I'm convinced it had something to do with the Dark Knight.
I think so too.
It
'cause
could be. It
Tom
could
Hardy
be
it
when
was
they
like
were
the same
filming
time.
it.
big, bro.
Could
Tom
it be
Hardy
when
got
they were
big.
filming it? Yeah, he was huge
Tom
for
Hardy
this.
probably
so-
was like 250 pounds when he played Bane. Like he was beefy. He was definitely lean in this. I don't know how tall he is. That probably plays in, but like, yeah, you might be right, Chris, because Dark Knight Rises came out in 2012.
20. Oh yeah, so you probably
yeah,
are right. He probably
2012.
could, he
Yeah,
probably
Is
had to
Tom
stay
Hardy-
bulked, and that
Is he from Pittsburgh? Because like both of those movies
No,
are like
British.
filmed in Pittsburgh. Oh, that's so
British.
random.
Well, that's-
Yeah.
he's
That's
he's
so
like
random.
British, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he just for some reason did 2 Pittsburgh movies back to back.
I think the reason why this movie kind of worked pretty well in an MMA setting and is because like most of the fights that are entertaining to watch aren't even like, oh, this person's fighting for the title or they have like 2 wins, now they're going to fight this guy. Most of it is like you understand their story and their background and what led them to this point. And 2 people with like clashing backgrounds when they fight, that's what makes people want to see it. Like Conor McGregor hasn't been a good fighter for like 8 years, but every time he fights, like there's always a storyline, there's always a build-up, and there's always like somebody to root for and root against. Those
all
are the best
marketing.
fights.
Yeah,
It all comes
Yeah.
from storytelling and marketing, just going up,
I'll
leading into
say-
these fights, and yeah.
that's how fights are
the-
though. So
The best,
Yeah.
the most entertaining fights are when Francis Ngannou fights because he like his story.
his story,
like, they-
if you know it,
They could legitimately make like a fucking mini series. Honestly, like he had like an absolutely like insane. Like I won't get into it because it'll take too long to tell. But he was like legitimately from like absolutely nothing.
He was a slave, wasn't he?
He was
Like-
he had to pay for school himself when he was 10 years old. He went
Yeah,
he went
maybe
to
it's slave was
mine
hard. But
sand.
he had to dig sand or something. Yeah, like
Mine
something
sand,
that seemed
yeah.
pretty crazy.
And then he
Yeah.
walked from what country was it? It's like in like South Central Africa, and he walked to France like that. And then
Nigeria, wasn't it?
no, it begins with a C. I want to say
Chad,
I
maybe
can't
I don't
remember.
know which country.
yeah. I can't. I
I know
know,
it's
if I
really-
heard it
Like doing like
Um,
a job no one would want to work.
as a kid, dude. As a kid,
Yeah,
and then he just like
that's what it was.
walked-
Child work. It was child. Like,
yeah,
like
Cameroon.
Yeah.
what it was.
Cameroon. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he yeah, dude. He like walked and like swam to Spain and like hopefully didn't get detained, and then like walked into France, walked into an MMA gym on accident because he thought it was boxing. And then all of a sudden became like he just started like destroying people in the UFC. And that's like why people like
Champion
watching
of the
him
world.
fight. Yeah, they like
Champion
that's
of the
like
world,
half
baby.
the reason why. Like when a fighter like legitimately has a reason for it, like the characters in this movie, it makes it so much more entertaining.
And he's a very
I feel
likable
like a lot
guy.
of other a lot of other sports like kind of lack that aspect of like the story first. And maybe that's just good on UFC's marketing, like Chris was saying.
Mm.
But there's like so much more. It's so much more personal because it's just
it's
you
better when it's
versus one
it's
other
individual. Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I like watching street fights.
You're right, John.
Yeah, everybody.
You're right.
The classic.
John, you need to watch you need to watch the YouTube channel Street Beefs because
really?
they are like all straight up like, you guys got beef? Come take it out in Satan's backyard. It's like a plywood octagon. And these 2 people fighting
In
Dude,
Florida.
it's in Baltimore, dude. I think it's in Maryland.
Oh, never mind.
I'm pretty sure it's in
Maryland.
Maryland.
That was what
Uh,
Kimbo did, I guess.
It was fucking Street Beefs. Literally the guy started it because he didn't want people to shoot each other over beef. Like he was like, there's too many
Yeah.
violence in the community. We're gonna build a cage and have them fight in the fucking like
Fist
grass
fight. Just
parking
beat
lot.
each other up better than
Yeah.
dying.
He's like, squash the beef.
Do we have final thoughts on this movie?
I wanted to bring up some stuff, Chris. What the heck?
Bring
I
up
had
some
like
stuff.
one more thing specific. I wanted to talk about Brendan's family. That's what I pretty much what I last thing I want to bring up for sure is I feel like they actually did a good job of making you feel for how much that would suck, how much it does suck, especially for people who have experienced it, like having family that fights. Like it, I mean, like like they should be safe, but it's not fun to, especially if they get hurt, to see your family like have to get taken away in an ambulance or like get a busted lip and their eye messed up. Like that's not
You've
fun to
got some
see. Like it
insight
is
into
hard
this,
on you.
Nate. Some,
Yeah, my
some
cousin
like personal,
fights, and
yeah.
it does. It's not fun. I mean, like I want him to do it because he loves it and he is very passionate about it. But it's never fun to see your family get punched in the face. Like you're not gonna be like, yeah.
One
What
thing
you
I
want to
was like, I feel like would have been explained better, and it's why I wanted like a flashback scene or something. Was the domestic violence like in this movie a one-time incident, or was it like a reoccurring thing?
It definitely feels like
What
implied it was
Caused
more
this
than
sudden,
once.
like suddenly they left, like Tommy and the
I-
mother left. Like why?
I think it was ongoing, and they just waited until they were old enough to do it. I think that's kind of like what was implied.
If you
But
really
Brendan's
like
older than
people who have
Tommy.
really
Why would
been
Tommy?
but-
You know.
if people have really been through abuse, like it's not that like they could always leave, but there's always they don't want to. It takes a lot to do that. So it might not. It's not usually something one big thing. It's usually over time. Like you just finally
But-
decide to.
But like, why did they? Yeah, but like it was
it
like such a
also-
sudden thing. Like Tommy and the
It
mother
seems
left.
like Brendan.
didn't say that.
Well, it made
Brendan-
it seem like they were planning it for a long
Yeah,
time.
they said they
Sorry,
had a
Ben.
plan.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it seemed like
because he was in
Brendan had
love.
a silver lining. Like Brendan had a reason. Tommy legitimately had nothing other than his mom.
I feel like the scene
yeah.
where their dad, like in the hotel, like relapses and busts out the liquor. I feel like that was a pretty good impression of what he was like back in the day, but like that's what he was like all the time.
But yeah, Nick Nolte did such a good job. That scene was so good. Like that.
I wanted
that's
to.
like-
We didn't specifically talk about the scene leading up to and when he relapsed. I feel like that was also a very
Yeah, that was
heart wrenching
brutal.
moment when Tommy just lets it out on him and tells him like, what does he say to him specifically? Oh man, I'm gonna be mad at. Like he tells him he likes him better when he was a drunk, and that's sad.
Yeah.
Like that's a sad thing. Like imagine your kid saying that to you, and what else he said? He threw the money at him and said like told him to go get a drink with it. I remember that, but it was
I
something
mean,
else.
it was
I'm not
basically
gonna
like,
think of it.
like you're gonna be a father now after everything.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want
to
it. Get away from me.
Yeah, he was like, now I need nothing from you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like it's too late now. Like you could have done that
Yeah.
earlier.
That's why I said I like that you never do see him forgive him. The only thing you really see is in the next scene was relapse, and then it actually is really sad. Wakes up and walks out to him, and
Yeah.
he does such a great job of really seeming like someone who is plastered, like so blacked out drunk that he doesn't
Yeah.
even know. He's not going to remember any of it. He's going to feel like death tomorrow. Like he seems,
But also like
he-
genuinely scary. Like you're like genuinely.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
if you were in
you
the
feel
room
like-
with them.
You feel
like,
like,
you'd
he's
be
going to hit
scared.
Tommy. You do feel like
Yeah,
he's gonna
exactly.
hit Tommy.
Like Tommy, like it showed so much of his character just because he could like put that person to sleep and like care for him, even though
it
like
shows.
it felt like
Yeah.
Tommy was in danger, like to us.
Feel like that's something they imply throughout the movie, and that's when they really show. Like they talk about him saving people, and he wants to help this family, and he talks about his mom, and I feel like that's a lot of the reason he did leave. Actually,
But
I
then-
forgot to bring that up.
but
It's
then
for the
after
mother.
Tommy
That's why
loses-
he left.
But then like right after, like the only fight after that scene, Tommy loses, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, like,
no, there's another fight before that. He fights Mad Dog and crushes him right before that
Okay.
because it's 2 fights on the same day. 2 fights the
Oh,
first day,
yeah.
2 fights the second day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It
he
was-
crushes Mad Dog.
it
Dog's
was
a
nice to
bitch,
see.
dude.
Fuck Mad Dog. Fuck Mad Dog. I think we can all agree. I love when he's like, it was sparring. It could happen to anybody. It's actually, I forgot to talk about that. One other
Yeah.
thing that's unrealistic, and they would never let that happen in sparring. If you were piecing up their
Yeah.
top fighter like that, they would absolutely pull you out, and they might even throw you out of the gym, like because you can't do that to
Yeah.
people in
Well, and
sparring.
the
You know?
video getting out, Dude,
because
like
then they get hurt and then they can't fight. Like
if you
Okay,
they
videotape
should ruin their
someone
fighter.
sparring, videoing sparring is like a huge no-no. That's almost as bad as
Especially
like
leading up to an
Astros
event.
cheating. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's like on the same level. That is like so unbelievably frowned upon.
Because if you
That's
know their
why-
technique, like it's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Well, they did show him like hiding it. He was like trying not to be.
Yeah,
seen.
they at least showed that. But like I said, if you're just beating up, like sparring, you're typically like they'll talk about it before, but you're rarely ever go 100%, and you're never trying to hurt somebody in sparring. Sparring isn't a fight. That's something that needs to be like split up. Like
That was
Yeah.
very consistent, I think, with Tommy's character because the Mad Dog like pieced that guy up who was like
And that's why
sparring
he
with him
did it.
first, and it seems like Tommy will be a hero when he has to be, but no
honestly,
other
guys,
time.
should Tommy have won though? Should Tommy have won? Like now that we keep talking about it, I'm feeling
No,
like
I
way
don't-
more. I'm going back
I
to
don't
rooting for Tommy.
I don't think he should have because
He needed to
It's-
morally learn. I agree.
I feel like
think that-
whichever of them won didn't really ultimately matter.
Yeah.
What is the
I think
fall of
it's-
Tommy? Like, I feel like narratively, like character wise, there's no fall of Tommy. There's no like, I became so.
I feel like he
Yeah.
thinks
Yeah,
he's a
when he goes to
monster
jail.
or a bad person because it does imply. That's what I forgot about the casino scene when he's trying to talk to him about being a war hero and he abandoned his thing. He thinks he's a bad person.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
I-
Which is people who were abused are like that. Like they think they deserved it because they were bad or something they did. But he didn't. He's actually, you see, regularly. He's always doing stuff for other people.
So as a character,
always-
why doesn't he win?
I don't
hard
think
to-
that is. Here's what I'll say. I think I have a way of explaining
gripe
this.
of the movie is it doesn't explain it. But go ahead.
Because
Sam.
I feel like
Here's-
it's because he wouldn't let his emotions out or like relax. Sorry, go ahead, Cole. You were. It seemed like
They
you had a
didn't show
point.
that. They never showed his emotions affecting him as a fighter. Like I needed that
That's true.
scene.
But
If you give me
I
the
said
scene,
I
I'll
agree
love
with
this
that.
movie.
I said I agreed with that.
Yeah, okay.
All of his emotions had been penting up the entire time that he had been fighting up until the very final fight against Brendan.
Mm,
And then they all came
I didn't
just
think about it like that.
pouring out at once in that final fight as he loses.
Hmm. I like that. I didn't think about that. Cole, I want to let you talk because we've all been talking
No,
over
no,
for
no.
like 4 minutes.
John kind of got what I was going to say. John got what I was going to say. So I'm good.
Sorry,
Okay.
Cole.
Yeah,
Say
back
it
to
fancier.
you.
Say it better.
I mean, I just feel like what they were trying to say is like he didn't really need to win as much as the brother, and so they were just going to give it to the brother. That's kind of what I got from.
That's kind of partially
Yes,
true.
Like,
Yeah,
I
with that.
understand why Brendan wins because he loves his family and he's doing it for his family and he needs this
I love
motivation.
Chris Evans. He
But-
loves his family. Whoopee.
Yeah.
No, I get that from a character
Fucking
perspective, but we don't
nerd.
get why Tommy loses. Like if Tommy would have been this like
Because
usually
winning,
I
like
agree.
technical fighter, and then in the end he turned because he couldn't fight his own brother, and he ended up playing being a different fighter, being like a suboptimal fighter. Like where he was only going for punches or
Mhm.
whatever, trying to just overpower him, and then he loses because of that. It makes sense, but because that like wasn't there, it just makes me like.
well,
I
don't know.
think
feel
the
like they
only
should've showed
time
it more.
Tommy, I think the only time Tommy does let his emotions out is in the cage, and that works against everybody in the cage except for his brother, who's kind of mastered. Like they come from the same like source of trauma, so his brother kind of knows like what that's like and isn't overwhelmed by that emotion. Because Tommy, like when he fights those guys and wins, the ref pulls off of him and he like his eyes are like bugged out. He's like he looks like
Yeah,
a
he's,
fucking like
freaking
rabid
out,
dog. Yeah,
like an animal.
that's-
Yeah.
and I think his brother knows that emotion, and so he knows how to deal with it.
That's fair.
I just remembered something I forgot to bring up is that like part of the Moby Dick motif and stuff is becoming the monster you're trying to like capture or stop. And that's kind of what is happening with Tommy is he's becoming kind of like a brute and like he's just fucking like an animal. Like he's hitting people when they're knocked out and stuff. Like he won't talk to anybody. He won't like he's becoming
Becoming his dad.
he's becoming his dad. Because he was an alcoholic and he was on pills. Like he's really, and that's why that's another reason the dad story actually I do enjoy it because he does like it right away. He says he doesn't drink. He wants him to stop, and then he makes him stop. So there is, like I said, I can agree with why you can be like I don't like I don't want the dad to be redeemed, but that's why I said I like that you never see him really with Tommy be redeemed. You see it more with Brendan, but you don't ever get that moment where Tommy's like, I just forgive you. He does forgive his brother in the end, but you never see him forgive the dad.
Do you think that Tommy and his dad share the guilt of like abandoning somebody? Like Tommy's dad.
I think they all do.
Dad,
I think they all do.
The dad clearly feels the guilt of abandoning his sons, but Tommy also feels really guilty about abandoning like his brothers in the Marine Corps. Like I feel like that's kind of like another parallel between Tommy and the father. That that's like Tommy feels really uncomfortable about becoming his dad because he both feels like he's abandoned his loved ones.
And I think the main moral or whatever is that like
I forgot that.
Brendan was able to like see all of his trauma and then like move past it, while Brendan basically never was able to like externalize, or Tommy was never able to externalize his emotion, and so he kept that all in, and then because of that, he basically became his trauma. He became his father. Yeah,
he became his father.
And that's
I forgot all about that. That is the whole Moby Dick motif that's really going on. Is like, he's becoming his dad by he's trying not to be like, because he's like, I hate you, I'm not you, screw that. He's becoming like his dad, like
in the pursuit to like defeat the beast, he becomes it. Like that's
he becomes the monster. Yeah, you stare into the abyss, all that stuff. Are you the same beast but a different animal, or what is that what it is? Same beast, different animal.
Everybody wants to be a beast until it's time to do what beasts do.
Beasts do. Were we talking about anything else specific, or are we ready to go?
I feel like this conversation was a good period.
It's a good ending. Yeah.
And what are we watching next week? That is the question.
Yeah, let's break out the wheel, boys. I want to see who goes next. After you three go, I say we can do
Chris.
Yeah, I think Chris just didn't want to go. He was really hoping.
Yes.
I'm actually happy to see this pick. Cole, you cannot be happy about this.
No.
Fuck. I was not prepared for this.
Why was that one prepared?
I actually
prepared.
I had one ready. So I guess
I'm surprised you're not prepared. Like what?
Dude, there's too many options. I got like information over.
What's your favorite movie? I figure like that'd be a good one.
I want to pick something that we haven't all seen before.
All right, fair enough.
So would you guys be opposed to watching the new All Quiet on the Western Front movie?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Because have you guys? Okay, have you guys watched 1917?
No.
No, I actually have not. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
I think I'm the only other one that's seen it.
Oh yeah, then we're watching 1917. I figured everybody had seen that. That was like my movie, and I was like, oh fuck.
All right.
Did you see it, Chris?
I've heard a lot.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh my god! All right, yeah, 1917.
Sweet, I'm down.
Good.
I like that. It's another very different movie. Cool with that.
Should I give a bit of a preview, or should we just go in cold?
I feel like we do that at the start of the video. Like I broke down kind of
that makes
sense.
The
World War One movie where the protagonist wins in the end.
Maybe.
Whoa.
Who knows? Spoiler.
World War One.
Yeah, dude, that movie's so
other than America.
That's like top 10 movies for me.
I want to watch it, so I'm kind of glad. I think that was a very good recommendation.
Nice,
dude. I can't like point anything that I would dislike about it. I guess we'll find out when I rewatch it. But
where can
I'm excited.
We watch it?
iTunes.
That is.
And where can you watch it?
iTunes.
This is what we did last time.
But where you could watch the review of it is youtube.com/film friends.
Good plug.
I think
the review of Avatar.
It's on HBO.
Prime Video. It's on Prime Video. So
okay, it's on Prime Video.
Might cost money though. I hope not, but it says Prime Video.
I think it does. I googled it. It said Showtime, which is normally like an extra thing.
Yeah.
You can get a free trial.
Or Row 8, whatever that is. But yeah, I'm super down to watch this movie. Can't wait for next week's now. I feel like we got a pretty solid start. First 3 movies are pretty good.
I really, really like 1917. So I'm very excited that not a lot of you have seen it.